Okay, people, let's walk through my code for this latest app I've got going on here. What deal is I sometimes drive for Uber, and I wanted to know when the best time to go to the airport was, like when are the most flights coming in. And sure, that information is available on their webpage, but it's not easy to just look at and see what's going on. Airlines share flights where so it'll have like 5 flights listed, but they're actually all the same flight, and there's various other things. It's just not nice to look at. I wanted to be able to like look at one page or look at it on my phone and just at a glance be able to see when's the best time. So this is what I came up with. It's pretty simple in terms of what's going on here. So I'm going to get rid of, well, you can see chart.js is the library that does this chart. Axios for HTTP requests. Cheerio is the scraping. And then, oh, this was chart thing that I didn't end up using. So anyway, we can get rid of this. So we have some more room here. Okay. So I started this. I had the idea on my own, but then a couple weeks ago, I don't know, maybe it's a month or two ago already, Wes Boss did this series where he was doing some scraping, and it was perfect. It was perfect timing. So I followed along. So some of my code is going to look remarkably like ripped off from his, but it's a totally different thing. Sure, I totally learned it from him. So some of this architecture, so to speak, could be improved, but I was just basically taking what we learned from him and pumping my stuff into it. But so I'll explain what I mean here. So here's the main index, right? So you import React and Axios to do the request, and Cheerio to do the scraping, all that stuff. Alright, so here's my component. Class app extends React component. Alright, so here's a function, get HTML. So this is the first step. You get the HTML from the website, right? I had a CORS problem, right, where it wouldn't let me. It was giving me the CORS error, and so you just do it through a proxy. That's what this is. CORS Anywhere Heroku app, and then it lets you get it. There's probably a more elegant solution, but this is the first thing that came up when I looked for it, and I really wanted to just get this up quickly. So the function does is axios.get, it's just a regular old HTTP request, just like as if you did it in the browser, but it takes, so what it returns is just HTML, but so it's not a document object where you can manipulate the object, right? So that's the point. It's just a string of text essentially. So that's what Cheerio does for you. It turns it into like an object where you can manipulate it, and it uses a sort of jQuery like syntax, so it makes it easy to manipulate. Anyway, so this first function gets the HTML through Axios. It's an asynchronous function. You could use a promise, whatever. This is ES6 syntax where we're destructuring. It's returning, promise is returning data, right? And then we're renaming that data as HTML in one step instead of saying return HTML and then rename it as data. This little syntax here just does it all in one step. This little comment here is the way the airport site works. If you just do this, leave this off, right? It just shows you the default, like whatever this current 6 hours are. It's 2 o'clock in the morning right now, so we're in the 0 to 6 a.m. There's not much going on. Whereas you can make it start at 18, meaning the last 8 hours of the day. So it'll change how it comes out over here. So that's what this is all about. The comment is about is changing that so you can get different stuff. So this function get HTML just returns the raw HTML. Get arrival times, which takes HTML as a argument or a parameter, this is a cheerio thing, right? So you do cheerio.load the HTML and save it to a variable, right? So now we have it, what this cheerio.load HTML does. Like I said, the HTML we're getting returned is not an object, it's just like a string, right, basically. So this turns it back into an object that you can manipulate with a jQuery sort of syntax and gives you some other functions, right? So I wanted to take that. Well, here's what I'm talking about with the jQuery sort of syntax. This is like find something and do something to it, right? So this is here's the variable. We're saving all our HTML to this cheerio thing. So here's the cheerio thing, and you're saying, well, you have to look through the website to find how to target a certain part. I found that the hours listed on the arrivals these were some of it had an ID, a flight detail, JUNT2, and so this is basically like a CSS selector or a jQuery selector, right? It had this ID and this ID and then the anchor within that, right? So that's basically returned an array of items. So then Cheerio has this each function. So looping through the array that Cheerio gave us, and I'm taking that, and again from that there were the first item on that, each item within that array is like an array inside of an array kind of thing. This bottom line, it took some fumbling around with, but to get that, all I was trying to get was the time, and loop through that array of all the times and push them into this array. So now I've got an array. This flight array is just an array of times. Now, as I mentioned, there's going to be some duplicates, because airlines, what they do sometimes is they share a flight. They'll all sell tickets on the same flight. So when you're looking up your flight number, there might be 5 airlines with the same flight. So when you look at the arrival time page on the website, it'll show 5 different flights, but it's really only one plane. So I don't want to have that show up 5 times in here. It's really going to skew the thing. So I wanted to get rid of all the duplicates. So first I did this you can use a set, right? New set from the flight array. Basically, a set is where it gets rid of all the duplicates. A set is just like, it's kind of like an array or an array-like item, but there can only be unique values in it. So you can create a set from an array by doing new set and pass it a flight array, and then but then it's a set, it's not an array, so you don't have all your array methods. So here was array.from turns something that's an array-like object into a real array, so it turned it back into an array. But then after I did that, I realized I could do this in one step, where, and like it says here, combine 2 previous statements into one statement. I did that new set flight array using the spread syntax, right? So it's an array. You can do the spread on an array like item, and so basically it takes that list and returns, or that are sort of array-ish thing, and returns just sort of the list of the items in it. And since I'm putting it inside brackets, it's basically putting them into an array. Basically taking an array, turning it into a set, and then turning right back into an array. Alright, so then I can have my array methods to use on it again. Convert to 24-hour time and return only the hour. So what was I doing here? Okay, so this is the saving, alright, array singled flight array. Right. That's a weird naming. I don't know what I was thinking there. Anyway, so I have this array that was back here. Like I said, I have this array now of all the time flights that are coming in with just the listing the hour of each one, and there's no duplicates anymore. And we're looping over that array, and we're getting just the hours, because all I want to know is what hour they're coming in, right? And I'm saving it to this variable flight array with the minutes removed. The way this to get this get hours, this, I mean, there might be I know there's like date libraries and stuff that might do this more elegantly, but to put I found that to get the date, the easiest way I could find quickly to do it was to get just the hours. Was this get hours function on a date? And since as I said here, I'm assuming the times are all the same day, so the date was arbitrary. This is my birthday. You can wish me happy birthday on June 11th. Okay. So it's the date and the time. The item happens to be the times. Remember I said this is an array of times, so each, it might be better say, instead of item, to say time, right? That's really more the convention, I guess, is when you're mapping, you don't say just say item, you try to name it what it should be, like, so each time, right? Whatever. Conceptually, to me, all these maps always, in my mind, I always think it's an array item. So that's how I almost always use item. Just, I don't know. Anyway, so at this point, I've got an array of just 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, right? Or how many, and how many are in there, right? So get, then the next thing, get count of each hour and save the count to an object. I think I explained that wrong. So this array here had the hours and minutes, right? But no duplicates. So now this get hours strips the minutes off. It gives me just an hour. So now I've got an array that does have duplicate of, like, I might have, for instance, here there's 20 flights coming in, 21 flights coming in at 6 o'clock, right? So this array at this point has 18, 18, 18, 18, 18, 18, 18, 21 times. Now before I'd done this hour thing, it might have been 1801, 1802, 1803. Okay, so I just removed the minutes. So, and I do have some duplicates here. So what I did then from here was to turn that into an object, because the charting thing needed an object. It needed an hour or a number for each one of these, right? Each axis. So I looped over the array, and I said if there's no count object, flight array, okay, flight array removed minutes, that's this thing, it's just the hour, the 18, 19, 20, and I had it in 24-hour time. So for instance, if we were doing these 6 hours, array, flight array removed minutes I, the first time through will be 18, right? And it's saying if that doesn't exist, right? Or it's asking, so it's a ternary operator, right? And I really love these so much more than a if statement, right? Because to me it seems just more like a English question. Count object with this number doesn't exist, right? Then do this. Then create count object with that equals 1. So you're if it does, so that's if it doesn't exist, do this. If it does exist, increment it. So in other words, the first time through, it's going to have nothing, right? So it's not going to exist. So set it equal to 1. The second time through, instead of 18, it would have been, so let's say we had flights at 18, 1801, 1802. The first one through, we're going to have 3 18s in this previous array. So the first time through, 18 won't exist. So we'll say 18, we'll have an object where the property invalid would be 18 and 0, or 18 and undefined, or 18 won't even exist. So this will say it doesn't exist. Well, create it and give it a value of 1. The next time through, it does have a value, a property of 18, so increment it. So we're building up an object, ultimately, that has object looks like property and value of 18, 21, 19, and 26. Property 20, value 23, property 21, value 22. You get the idea. Building up a object, which I called the count object. Let's see. So in the console, let's see. The count object is called. So here's the object that I'm talking about that you're building up. 18, 21, 19, and this is the hour, and this is how many flights, right? Get rid of that. Okay, return. So that was all that was all inside of this get arrival times, right? And it finally returns that count object. Okay, async go. What is this? So this is a function that runs the get arrival. We said that last function was all get arrival times. It runs this get arrival times with this URL, right? And then sets the state to that object, right? So at some point over down here, I have to call this go function still. All right, so we're finally getting into more of like the and this is all inside my app class, right? But I'm just defining functions up here so far. Alright, we're getting to stuff that looks more like a React component, right? You go to constructor. I don't even know if I need this. Well, I'll do it. I do need it because it's this state. I know you can do this now without, doesn't have to be in the constructor. I could have just done state equals, or I could have used hooks or something like that. Still working on learning those. I get it. I was trying to do this quickly, and this is the way I know how to do it quickly. All right. I have two functions down in here, the get HTML and the go. I have to bind this. I could have used arrow functions, right? And then I wouldn't have to bind this because it binds it because arrow function doesn't have an explicit this. It binds to the parent, right? I get all that. Again, I was trying to do it quickly, and this is the way I'm more used to doing it. Still working on practicing those other ways. Anyway, so component did mount. Lifecycle method, after the component renders to the page, it very quickly says, okay, I'm done mounting, now what do we want to do? And this is where you're supposed to call HTTP request, right? So that's what it is, this go. Remember I said before up here, oh, at some point I need to call this go function, because that's how all that logic up here finally needs to be called somewhere. It's called when the component mounts, call that go function with this.state.url. This.state.url. This.state is an empty object. That's weird. I guess I'm not sure do I need that? Where am I setting this.state.url? What happens if I take that out? I feel like that doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's not even needed there. It should be passing the URL. I guess if I had a different URL, yeah, that's not needed there. Okay, because all that URL was hard-coded. If I were doing something more dynamic, where I could put in different URLs that I was pushing into Cheerio, I would be able to pass that URL in there. But here it's not necessary because I have them hard-coded within the code, because I'm only worried about my airport at my time, right? So cool, I got rid of that. That's anyway. So if a component did mount, we call it go, which does all that stuff, that complicated stuff we were talking about, the logic and the manipulating the array and the object and all that stuff. Okay, so finally we've got the component mounts, it calls all this function, it gets the data, it sets the state to be my object, and then finally we're going to render something to the page. Holy cow, after all that. This I had on this click on the console, I had when I was, this doesn't need to be here. This was stuff I was doing when I was debugging, so to speak, trying to get this all working. This is completely unnecessary. So I could probably get rid of that too. What happens if I just totally get rid of that? Yeah, still don't need any of that either. H1, 24-hour time. My chart, this was that charting library. What is the library called? I forget. Chart.js, hey, what a name, right? Has a component called my chart, right? Where I'm passing as a prop the state data from this dot state. This dot state was being set to my sort of count object. Remember the 1821, 1926, right? So let's take a look at this, my chart component. This one's a little simpler. We're from, oh, okay, I guess this was part of it. I thought it was from chart.js. I wonder if this was, I don't remember whether both of these are needed for this, or if that was from a different library that I was trying to test. Regardless, I'm not getting rid of it right now. I don't feel like doing it. Alright, so then this was React chart kick.adapter.chart function, make an array. Taking an object. What was this about? Make an array. Oh, okay, so that's what it was. The other library I was trying to use needed an object. This one needed an array. An array of little mini arrays of so the first item in the array is an array that says 18 and 21. The second item of the array is an array of two items that says 19 and 26. So this little function here, make an array from this, taking an object. It did object.keys from the object that you're given, and it makes array item of the key, and then the object.key, right? Pretty straightforward. Return that new array. So this chart took the props that we passed down, which was that state object, right? And returns the chart with my make array, calling make array props.stateData. Okay, so this is props.stateData is the state from the parent being passed into this function, right? And the data is that array. Okay, so I don't know. Some people would call this function, right, and save it as a variable out here somewhere, and then just put that variable, data equals that variable. I don't know. I don't think this is any harder to read. Apparently a lot of people do, because I see code written that way more often, I guess. I don't know. I don't mind seeing it this way. You know, if I'm working for some company and everybody else does it that way, I'll do it that way. Whatever, I don't care. Anyway, so this was just from their website. This is the way you do it, and it takes an array of arrays and it spits this out. So pretty cool. So then export it, and we use it back over here just as a component, and that is it. Yeah, I hope that helps. Again, I learned how to do this basically from watching just day one of that Wes Boss series. He did like a 5-day series thing where he did some scraping, and he had a whole node server, and was it because he was trying to, like, I think, if I didn't watch the whole thing, I think his ultimate goal was sort of make a chart of how his things changed over time. So he was saving it to a file. I didn't really need all that stuff. I just I'm looking more like a snapshot rather than doing saving values over time. So I basically got all I needed off of just his first video. I guess that's it. Any questions with this, please feel free to ask me, and I will do whatever I can to help. And I will say that after I created this, like I said, I created this for Uber. There was one night I went, and it was a really rainy night, and all the flights were delayed, and I realized there's a major flaw in this whole thing, is that this website that I'm scraping only shows the scheduled arrival times, the original schedule, not like if it's delayed what the current arrival time now is. So this is not truly up to date at any given time. Since then, I did find another website that lists the updated arrivals. In other words, when a flight has been delayed from 11 to 12:30, it'll show instead of 11. It'll actually show 12:30. I haven't gotten around to doing the scraping part of that page yet. So ultimately, my next step here is switching the scrape from this website to the new website, but then I'll have to figure out this whole thing again. Remember, this was going through the HTML and figuring out where in that all that data the actual hours that I want is. So that's just my next step, and this is still helpful because, I mean, if there's delays, they're generally pretty much all delayed, so it's still helpful. But it would be nice to have it even more accurate, so that'll be my next steps. Again, if this was helpful in any way, I hope that helps somebody. If you got any questions, please feel free to ask me, and thanks for watching.